Federal workers suffered a loss to add on to the pile of losses this year. We have over 500,000 federal workers with reduced rights. This started with an executive order and it has been strengthened with a court appeal. What's the aftermath and how will it impact you? Let's get into it. President Trump signed an executive order to end collective bargaining for many federal unions. Trump's main argument with this is many federal agencies are tied to national security. And unions, collective bargaining agreements, they're just getting in the way. So this has the potential to impact a third of the federal workforce. The White House says certain federal unions have declared war on President Trump's agenda, and he refuses to let union obstruction interfere with his efforts to protect Americans. They're framing this as a national security issue. They're saying the unions delay their reaction time. They reduce the speed of the government. And there's already laws that exempt certain agencies. Agencies like the FBI, CIA, NSA, GAO, and the Secret Service. The reason those agencies are exempt? National security. Makes sense. He wants to expand this to the DoD, Department of Defense, and some divisions of the DoD. Yeah, makes sense. But then he wants to add 2 more agencies to that list, the VA and the IRS. The IRS blows my mind because how is filing taxes related to national security? Why would you strip away federal employees that work at the VA and IRS? Why would you remove their bargaining rights? And earlier, we saw Homeland Security end union rights for 47,000 TSA workers. You know, the folks that check your bags at the airport. The TSA union called it an unprovoked attack. And what's really a little bit silly is when you look at the reason why. Why did they end the union agreements? They said that it was union representation hindered merit-based performance recognition and advancement. That seems like a made-up answer to me. How in the world is the union stopping you from recognizing a stellar employee or advancing an employee? I don't see it, but this is the least of their worries because there's a lot of political will to completely get rid of the TSA and replace it with private companies. To privatize security within the airports, they did it before 9/11. If you got on a plane before 2001, chances were it was a private security company that was checking you out before you got on that plane. Now, as a result of this executive order, the union sued, and then the federal government, they appealed. A split 3-judge panel ruled on a lawsuit filed by unions against Trump's order. The majority sided with the government. They're saying the union does not have a legal right to sue the administration because this is still ongoing. And while it's ongoing, those union protections should still remain. Now, it's always interesting in a case like this to see who appointed the judge. Where did the judge lean when you're talking about political ideology? 2 of the judges were appointed by a Republican president. The one that didn't agree, that judge was appointed by President Biden. Meanwhile, the Justice Department filed a lawsuit in Texas on behalf of 8 agencies to confirm they can legally terminate their union agreements. Attorney General Pam Bondi said, "We are aggressively protecting President Trump's efforts to ensure unions no longer interfere in the national security functions of the government." But it's not just lawsuits. Unions are hitting the streets. There's a lot of people hitting the streets. There's this organization called 5051, and it essentially means 50 protests, 50 states, 1 movement. And they're hosting all kinds of demonstrations and protests around the country. The next one is actually June 14th, which is being called No King's Day. June 14th is also Flag Day, and if you ever served in the Army, you know June 14th is the Army's birthday. So why does President Trump want to get rid of all these union agreements? Aside from national security, why doesn't he like unions? Well, here's a few reasons. 1, there are barriers to quickly firing or reassigning federal employees. 2, union negotiated contracts inflate government costs. And 3, they're political adversaries and part of the deep state. You know, I never really considered unions part of the deep state, but President Trump has actually called unions the deep state. When I hear people say deep state, I'm normally thinking about NSA, CIA, FBI, but to some people it means the unions. Another thing that a lot of Republicans point at is that unions, the money that they're able to generate, oftentimes they donate to left-leaning causes. So that would be the opposite of what the Trump administration is trying to accomplish. The largest union, AFGE, is in serious trouble. They plan to lay off more than half of their staff. They will be cutting about 200 jobs from their organization. The main reason why is the money stopped coming in. So President Trump ordered all agencies to no longer deduct union dues automatically. So now the union, they lost like 3/4 of their money like overnight, and they're scrambling to find other ways to get people to start paying them money. And a lot of people are disillusioned with the union at this point. The union in theory is supposed to offer you that layer of protection. But when President Trump came into office, there wasn't much that they could do. They filed lawsuits, yeah. They appealed, yeah. But when it comes to mass firings, it was really too little too late for a lot of people. Keep in mind that private unions and federal government unions, they're completely different. With the big difference being that federal unions do not have the right to strike, and they're limited in bargaining for pay and benefits, but they still represent a voice in Congress when they lobby. And this isn't the first time a US president has taken on the unions. If you look at President Ronald Reagan, he essentially fired 11,000 air traffic controllers when they went on strike. And that effectively ended that union. But it's different. President Trump is not ending a strike. Ronald Reagan was ending a strike. What President Trump's doing is completely dismantling unions across the board. This battle is far from over, and with the unions battling in court and their finances in shambles, it's really an uphill fight. The AFGE says they'll keep going, stating, "We will not be deterred, silenced, or intimidated into submission." Here's what I'm watching. Will the courts ultimately side with the president on this matter? I'm leaning towards probably. I could see them leaning in that direction for a few reasons. Number one, we have a more conservative judiciary. Many federal judges have been appointed by Trump and Senate Republicans. Two, presidential authority. Courts have ruled the president has broad authority to manage the executive branch. And three, Trump's 2018 executive orders made it harder for unions to stop executive actions in court. But the unions could still potentially win. They can look at the president as overreaching, as circumventing Congress, not going through Congress, something like that. So what about the federal workers in the meantime? Well, what we've seen is some agencies, they're completely fine with bargaining rights. Other agencies, like the TSA, they're not okay with it. So it's gonna differ based on where you work. Last year, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that only about 10% of U.S. workers were unionized, down from 20% in 1983. If federal unions take a hit, that number could drop even lower. In addition to all of that, what we're witnessing right now is more and more federal agencies leaning on overtime. They don't have enough workers. You still have to get the mission accomplished. And what that means is you need to come in on Saturday. You need to come on in on Sunday because we need you to put more hours in. We're going to pay you more, but we need you to work more. This is increasingly becoming more of a trend throughout the federal government. If you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.